Hey guys, I was going to say really exciting episode. All my episodes are exciting, I'm overwhelmed by how much people are listening and giving feedback and just enjoying them and taking a lot from them. But today's episode, there's actually going to be two episodes because Sam and I had so much to well, Sam had so much to talk about on his story. So Sam, I went into a rehab facility in March 2020, just at the beginning of lockdown, and I explained some of this in the episode, but I'll just give you a little intro. Sam was one of the counselors in Ocean Recovery when I was in there. And he's such a good guy, really good, knows all his stuff about recovery. Obviously, he's been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and we kept in touch after I came out, which is I'm not sure it's ethical, but we did just create quite a good bond, and especially after I came out. So I don't think there's any issues because I wasn't a service user anymore at that point. But as I say, we've kept in touch over the years. We've not actually met up. He's in Blackpool, I'm in the Isle of Man. And about a month ago, I messaged him to say, listen, really like you to come on the podcast and tell us your story. And he said, I have. He says, I'm doing a bit of soul searching at this moment. And he said, I have one small condition for coming on the podcast. And I was like, oh yeah, what's that? And he goes, well, we do it in person. And I come over to the Isle of Man and we hang out for, a couple of days and we just reconnect. So obviously I jumped at the chance. He was meant to come at the end of, what are we now, April. So he was meant to come at the end of February, but the boat and the storm, I think that was that big stormy Owen. And so the boats were cancelled. So we just postponed it a month and he came over and we just had a cracking weekend, really getting to know each other. And we did the podcast over a couple of days. So there's quite a few interludes in the two episodes. But it's just a fantastic story. So I'm not going to say any more. And here's Sam. So Sam, welcome to After Hours. It's great to have you over, man. I was just thinking this the other day. We met 5 years ago. Do you want to tell the listeners how we met?
Oh, it's quite interesting. Hi, I'm Sam, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, did I not introduce you?
You did.
Sam Lowry.
Well, So it's quite interesting how we met because it was in a detox unit that I worked at the beginning of your recovery journey, shall we say.
Yeah. And what was specific about that time? Like I came in on the 16th of March 2020, and I think 3 or 4 days later, the whole country went into fucking lockdown or COVID.
Yeah. Well, there was me and a guy that worked there called Justin.
Legend.
Yes.
They're both legends, obviously.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad you added that.
Yeah.
But we were actually in the office looking at the board and we were hearing all the news coming in and we were like, what the hell is going on? We just literally looked at each other and it was like, wow, what's going on? But within that, obviously within the detox unit, it was kind of more normal than it was outside. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You guys were coming in telling us stories about we had to queue 2 meters apart at Sainsbury's for an hour and a half to get some washing up liquid, the microwave dinner and some toilet paper, which they didn't have any. Yeah. Yeah.
Get the toilet paper.
And then we're sat in Ocean Recovery, I think there was about 10 of us at that point and all at different stages of, detox and whatnot. I got past the worst 3-4 days of it on Librium. But it was we were getting our 3 square meals a day cooked for us by the amazing chefs. And
all sat around the table.
Sat around the
chatting
table.
normally.
You know, like sharing old fucking drinking war stories and whatnot. And I'm not trying to say it was a good time because we were all going through our own personal hell, but it was all right. You know, it was all right. It was a safe space, is what I'll say.
Well, it was,
and we felt safe.
It was kind of, you got a community vibe in there which nobody else was getting.
Yeah.
Well, or a very small percentage of the world was getting at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you were probably the safest place you could have been.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And I think, you know, I'm not going to mention names, but there was people that I know at that point, and they were kind of almost a bit like, you don't know what it's going on like out here. And there was resentment from them that I was in this safe space. And I was like, I'm not here by, well, I was here by choice, but I wasn't. Yeah. And it was like, I didn't want to be here, but I needed to be there, you know? And it was like, don't give me your resentment. And so, yeah, we got off on a bit of a tangent there, Sam.
It's fun.
Tell us a little bit about your childhood and when you had your first drink.
Oh, well, should I start from birth?
You start where you want to start.
There was once a young boy
called Samuel.
Called Samuel. I was going to be called Elliot, by the way, but
both good names, man.
My mum was going to call me Elliot, but my dad fiercely argued the point, and he decided on Samuel.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah, it could have been Elliot. But anyway, 1984, born in Salford, premature by 7 weeks.
You couldn't wait to get out and get cracking
I
in this world.
I must have been absolutely dying to get out of the.
I think I was late.
Out of the womb, you know. But you know, if I would have known what was to come, I might have stayed in for a little bit more. Longer. You know what I mean? But anyway, So to be honest, and I think about this because do we carry the trauma of childbirth with us sometimes?
I mean, if it was, I'd need to ask Jen that, being you know, an ex-midwife. But I guess if you've got a traumatic birthing, then maybe, yeah. And was yours traumatic? I mean, do you remember it, or do you think?
I just remember it from the stories, implanted memories. You know what I mean? That my mum would tell me, but my mum did talk about it a hell of a lot.
Yeah,
you know, because she was in hospital for about a month maybe before I was born, and then about a month or so after I was born. You know what I mean? I ended up in an incubator, and you know, I actually had jaundice when I was a baby. Which, quite ironic, as we will continue the story.
Yeah. But that's interesting that obviously there was trauma for your mother through that. So that's obviously maybe been passed on to you through the stories. Yeah, and
it was, in all honesty, it was talked about a hell of a lot. But one thing within that as well, she always said, "You're a fighter. You know, you survived that," and she instilled that in me forever. You know what I mean? Like that you're a fighter. You know, you can fight in this world, and you'll do okay.
Because you didn't give up at that point.
So you can get through anything, and that was she instilled that in me from being a kid. You know what I mean? But anyway, born prematurely. Obviously, got through that. We lived in Earlham, just outside of Manchester, till I was 2 years old, but it was getting a bit rough. There was me, my dad, my mum, and my brother, one of my brothers, who's 2 years older than me. So they decided that we're getting out of this because it was getting a bit rougher in that area. So we moved to a place called Rosendale, which is in between Rochdale and Atkinson.
I've heard of it.
Famous for the ski slope. It's only famous for the
snowboarding capital of the world, Rosendale.
So we ended up there, which, you know, it was cool as a kid. You know, there's woods and all that stuff.
And it was the 80s, early 90s, wasn't it? So we had more freedom, didn't we?
Yeah. You know, going down to the woods and stuff, making fires, all that stuff.
Make sure you're in when the street lights come on, kind of thing, and you'd obviously push that to the limit. But we had more freedom than kids do now. I'm not saying there wasn't bad people out on the streets, but wasn't the same fear that's instilled in parents. And I'm not saying it's a wrong fear,
there are nasty people out there, but we just had that more freedom to go off and get up to whatever we really wanted to, and our parents weren't bothered.
Latchkey kids, isn't it?
Yeah.
we just go out.
I had my own
back,
key to get in the house.
Yeah.
You know, my mum worked like 2 or 3 jobs, so you know, I'm not saying we weren't looked after. Of course we were, but we could just kind of let ourselves in and you know, come and go as we kind of pleased, because it just suited us. You know. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Yeah,
carry on.
It's cool. So, like, it wasn't the most conventional because my dad was an artist, so he did his thing. You know, he wasn't going out 9 to 5 doing the job. You know what I mean? And my mum worked as a chef on and off.
Mm-hmm.
So, but my dad was always at home. So, where was I going with that?
Well, tell us a bit about who your dad is. You know, for the listeners.
Well, he's
a bit of a legend.
Bit of a legend.
Awesome, amazing legend. I mean, tell us what he should mainly.
Who carried his own demons.
Yeah.
You should say. However, he was an artist. You know, he for his bread and butter, he did like cartoons. He did work for the
newspapers and that.
Newspapers, Guardian. He did a lot of work for the enemy.
Yeah.
It's like in the 80s.
What was his name?
He was in it.
For the listeners.
Raymond Lowry.
Ray Lowry.
Yeah. But like, what he's, I'd say, mainly known for would be going on tour with the Clash and designing the London Calling album cover,
which is just absolutely iconic.
Yeah,
and do you know what I mean?
It's pretty cool.
When I found that out, I was like, what? Like
he was in the rehab. He was working in the rehab.
Yeah. So
Really?
so Ray didn't take the actual photo of the front cover, but he designed the whole concept of the album, the design, the font, everything inside it, and all of that.
Well, the inner sleeve actually has got all the lyrics. You know, to the songs, and he handwritten, wrote them all. Yeah. So it's a real unique piece. You know what I mean? But with it, obviously the lettering is ripped off. Basically, or I call it a homage to Elvis Presley, rock and roll, his first album.
It's that kind of juxtaposition with the Clash and Elvis, and
Well, my dad at the time, because he went on tour with them for like 3 months in 1979.
I'm betting that was messy.
Yeah, and there was a lot of alcohol involved, and you know, knackered on the tour bus and all that. You know, I heard little bits from it. He was never one for like, oh, I did this, I did that, you know, so I only heard little bits. I've learned more out of his sketchbooks and stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
and was this before you were born? I'm trying to think what year London Calling.
So it's like 5 years before I was born.
Yeah.
But the Clash affected him so much. He was like, these guys are as important to music as Elvis was at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, with the connection with the homage to the cover, it's like, there you go, rock. This is freaking rock and roll.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that bloody photograph, you know what I mean? It's like Paul Simmons smashing his bass.
So much going on in that album cover. It's up there. Whenever you hear, like, you know, you see polls and charts of like iconic or best album sleeves in the world. It's up there. It's always top 10, top 5. Do you know what I mean? Because it's just such a powerful photograph, and then you know the wording as well.
And Penny Smith, the photographer, didn't actually like it because it's out of focus. And my dad was told that, and he's like, he didn't know because he was blind as a bat. He had glasses, like, he had no idea. He had no idea. He's just like, that's the one. And like him and Joel Strummer, apparently they were like, no, that's the one.
That's the one.
That one.
Yeah.
And, well, look, like history's proven. You know, so that's, you know, that he's most well known for that. But
the other stuff that he's done that I've seen is just amazing. There's so much humour in his cartoon work and his drawings and his other work as well, which is just amazing.
Yeah, he's got so many different avenues to his work. It's like you see an abstract piece of his and an oil painting, and it could quite easily be mistaken for a different artist. You know,
because he's eclectic with his
different. So that's his little story. Yeah. So again, it's not quite conventional. He was always creating. He'd disappear up into his workroom for like a week, doing his cartoons. You know, just hunch over his desk. And he'd fire them out to loads of different
would he be drinking when he was doing that,
No.
or was because this is the thing.
He had to be
Completely
sober whilst doing that.
Yeah.
But because of this creative process, he'd do that, and then he'd have a blowout.
Yeah, because he'd burn himself
to
out
deal
with that.
it, to manage it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like when I was younger, alcohol was a thing. It was just so normal in the house. You know, I think we touched on it as we were discussing yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
That my dad would go out to the shop to get a few cans, generally special brew. You know, the strong ones,
the quality stuff.
You know, but it'd be like me and my brother would be like, "Oh wow, like, cool. We can get a chocolate bar for that."
Oh yeah.
But it was just so normal. But he'd go out to the shop every single day.
So it's like you were that Pavlovian response. He's going to the shop. Know you're getting a treat. So
and I was a chocoholic, man.
Yeah.
It was like it started early. Take chocolate away from me, and I'd go ape shit.
Yeah.
I mean it. So that sugar response.
That's why we've got the cacao, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh yeah, we can go on to that in a bit.
Like,
the world of cacao.
Listeners are like, what are we on about cacao for now? Well, we'll tell you in a bit, listeners.
So again, though, at home, it wasn't, like I say, not quite conventional, but it was cool. It was like music. Dad was always playing music and stuff, but my mum and dad didn't have the best relationship, you know. It was quite volatile. It was, you know, there was physical fights.
But they're both drinkers, so that kind of goes hand in hand. When it's, and I'm not saying like people that just having the odd glass of wine here and there. When you're fully steeped in that drinking, I don't know if you want to use the word alcoholics with them both.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's definitely going to be volatile. It's going to be, I'm sure there's times when they absolutely both adored each other and got on, and they were in the same headspace, and drinking and enjoying it. But then it just goes to
it did, and it just
chaos.
added fuel to whatever insecurities, demons they had going on anyway. Which then they both had their own. You know what I mean? And that combination was just explosive. And so like from being young, like I've got two older brothers, but the one that's 2 years older than me, called Joe. We lived in the house in Rosendale. My older brother had actually gone. He came over very briefly to Rosendale, and then he was like, "This isn't for me." He went over to Rosendale. Didn't really get on with my dad.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of tension, you know, just growing up, and I can remember that from being 3. You know
like walking on eggshells kind of thing when you don't know what mood they're going to be in, or
not quite that, because it wasn't, in all honesty, aimed at us.
Yeah,
it was each other. It was them two.
They were taking out on each
you know
other.
What I mean? Yeah. But there was a safe haven for me and my brother, and it was our next door but one neighbours who we become very friendly with. They were older lads. And if my mum and dad would kick off, we'd run around there. Like, literally, this was normal.
That was just the thing, right. We're going,
Mum and dad are arguing again, and they'd let us in. And it's like, thinking back to it, that shit's not normal.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
It's not. Your house should be the place where you feel at most safe.
Yeah.
You know, rather than having to go to the neighbours to feel safe.
Yeah. So there was a lot of arguing, but there was it's weird because on the opposite side to that, there's a lot of music, a lot of laughter. You know, they educated us in music, especially my dad, because he had a freaking vast vinyl collection, which I used to worship at the altar of the record player in the back room. You know what I mean? And he had like rolls and rolls of vinyl. So as a kid, just flicking through them, man.
Where is that vinyl collection now?
Well, I've got half of it, should we say?
Yeah. Because you're probably looking at my vinyl collection, and it's not that great, you know.
Well,
there's classics in it, but it
I've
needs
already
to build.
flicked through that, and I quite like it already. There's some cool ones in there, but over the years, there was a flood at my dad's, so he lost some through that. Then in my later, should we say, drinking career, a box of absolute fucking belters. We can swear on this, can't we?
You've done it now.
No,
I already have. It's fine.
Yeah,
They're all. I always do them as explicit, so
that's
can't
cool
listen
then.
to them.
All right, so you might get some more vanity.
Bring it on, mate.
But
this is real. This is raw.
Yeah,
this is after hours with Jimmy Thistle.
Yeah.
I'll probably take that.
No, don't. No, man. This is
real.
Unabridged.
I don't know.
So where we were, vast vinyl collection. I had a box for some reason later on in life. I had a box of really cool ones, and it went, man. And I honestly couldn't tell you where it's gone because I was out of my head at the time. So
stolen or possibly sold. Yeah.
Either or.
For
I couldn't tell you. It's still. I've until I talk about it, I think I've let go of it.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, that box.
It's a bit of a
what was in it?
Yeah.
Like, name a few of the pieces.
Well, there was some of my favourite ones, but there was like recently I've been looking for like Sgt. Pepper's.
Probably originals.
Originals they were, but just albums like that I kind of think, oh, well, my dad had that, and then I look, and it's like, oh, it's not there, that one's not there. Yeah. You know, like Joy Division, Transmission.
Yeah.
Not Transmission, what's the first album called? New Dawn Fades.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Well,
anyway.
I'll add it in at the end. Go, this is the name of the album. I think you're right, though,
Can't think. Right, but anyway.
Hello, fairies.
Hi, fairies.
For the listeners that don't live in the Isle of Man, there's a bridge, and when you drive across it, you have to say hello to the fairies. Otherwise, they'll cast untold badness upon you. So it's pretty easy just to say hello to them and let them know that you respect them and get on with your day.
And magic exists.
Yeah. So tell me when your magic does exist, mate. When I wouldn't be sober if it wasn't for magic and spirituality. When did you have your first drink?
This is interesting because I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts.
Oh, thanks, man.
No, I think you're doing a fantastic job, and they're good. But a lot of people are like 14, 15, and it was quite a crazy year or two when I was like 9 or 10. Like within this year, I'll just briefly give you a nutshell of what happened.
Yeah.
So it was like my grandma died on my mum's side.
How old were you? Sorry.
It was 9 or 10.
9
I
or
think
10,
it was
right?
9.
Yeah.
But my grandma died. My mother had a nervous breakdown from it. But I think it was a culmination of everything.
Yeah.
So grandma died. Mother's breakdown. She ended up in a psych ward for a while. Then my cousin died on my dad's side, and she was only like 20, I think at the time. She had a battle with cancer and then died of an aneurysm.
Yeah, that's tragic.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then my dad was quite vulnerable at that point. Also, I found my dad at the top of the stairs. There was like two flights of stairs in the house. I found him. After all this, what I've just described, I think my mother was finally going to leave my dad. And he was there at the top, on the middle of the stairs, actually, flight of stairs, with a bottle of vodka and loads of pills. You know, so this is all happened in kind of a year. Maybe two.
Which is rapid succession.
There's a lot of stuff going on, you know, and I think my mum's finally finding the courage she's going to have to get out of this relationship, or something bad is going to happen.
To the pair of them, or either of them.
Either or, one of them could end up dead, and that that is a reality of it, and I'm not shy of being honest about that.
And it happens, you know.
Yeah. So my first memory of because we used to hang around with his next door but one neighbours. They're a lot older, a good bit older. So we were kind of experimenting at the same time they were in their teen years. Me and my brother were a lot younger. So we'd have the odd can and stuff like that. But a vivid memory of, and I was 10 at this time, was with another friend of mine, Chris Lamb. If he ever listens to this, he'll remember it as well. But his parents owned a restaurant around the corner.
Yeah.
And they didn't go away that much because they ran the restaurant. So they'd gone out for the evening or the day or whatever, and we had free reign. Yeah.
Right.
So we were like the bar. Yeah.
Yeah.
10, 11, something like that. And
we called it an empty up in Glasgow, an empty. When the parents went away, it was like, oh, you got an empty, right? All back to yours,
okay, then we had an empty.
You had an empty.
And we were excited.
But you had a bar.
Fact. Yes, it was a little bar, and it was just, honestly, we were going for the whiskey, the vodka, anything we possibly could.
I was going to say, kids in a sweet shop, but potential alcoholics in a bar.
Practicing.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were at the shops. We're going for it, absolutely going for it. And then we used to hang around in a little wood that was away from the restaurant.
Yeah.
So we ended up in there, and by this point, we're wasted. We're absolutely wasted. But I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, you know, all this shit's been going on at home, you know what I mean? And it's like, wow, I love this feeling. Mm-hmm. I'm out of my face here, and I feel numb. Mm. Then the vomiting started, you know, and all that. And basically ended up passing out on this field, me and him. And we were found by a guy that lived just over the way. He was like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? But literally next to sick and all that.
Yeah.
So that was my first experience of actually being wasted.
But it's interesting because obviously, you know, you've got this trauma that's come from, you know, some of your kind of childhood and upbringing and all that. But, you know, for me, it was like I've always been, because I've gone to the meetings and that, and I've tried to kind of pinpoint if there is trauma in my life that's caused me to become a problematic drinker compared to like my brother when we've had the same upbringing, and what's going on there and how does that happen. But actually, like you, the first time I got drunk, like I'd had the odd little sip of wine or a bit of sip of my dad's beer growing up and all that, because it was the 80s and that's what they did. But like the first time I actually physically got drunk and got the effects from alcohol, I fucking loved it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That was it. I was like hooked, for want of a better term. I wasn't hooked at that point, but I loved the feeling, and I was like, I need to get more of this.
Yeah, and it's kind of like strange to describe, but it's like, oh, I'm home.
Yeah,
I'm home.
Yeah.
This is
who I am.
Yeah.
I was like, I almost wanted it to define me right from the start, and then I just, it was almost like the drug itself has this own persona, and it was like, guys, we've got one. Yeah. We've got one here.
We're having him.
He loves this. He loves us. Let's give him, you know, the best experience of his life.
Yeah.
You know, a little short while, and then, so sorry, carry on. But I was the same. I loved it right from the off.
Yeah.
You
know? No, it's cool. From then on, it was like I liked being wasted. Not just having a little bit. But at 10, you know, you're not getting access to, you know, getting wasted all the time.
No.
So, but it was then a gradual.
It's like
thing
a treat.
Because at this point, again, what was going on at home, my mum finally left. Mm. She left the family home, and it was at the time, you kind of, like with anything, just like in life, you crack on. Mm. You try to. But my dad was devastated. However, the husband he was or wasn't, you know, he was still in a lot of pain when she went. Yeah. You know, but there was a point at this time, like 10 and 11. So I'm transitioning into secondary school as well here. Yeah. So there's big changes going on.
Yeah, you're finding out who you are. You're meeting new people. Creating a new kind of tribe of friends and all that kind of stuff.
But I remember saying to a friend of mine, and this was probably six months a year, maybe after my mum had left, probably 6 months. When you're younger, time seems a little bit longer, doesn't it, than when you get older. Yeah. But and I felt it, and it was like we didn't know whether my mum was dead or alive because of no contact or anything. You know, so literally I actually said that to a friend, and I remember saying that, and that was where my head was at with it. You know,
I don't know whether my mum's alive or dead. Yeah,
because of that lack of contact and nothing. My dad might have even said it.
So she hadn't even kind of wrote a letter and said, "Listen, boys, I can't be here for now. I'll be in touch." It was just one day your mum's gone. And I guess your dad, he was probably kind of bitter with what she'd done and left, so he might have said things like, "Oh, yeah, your mum's dead." Do you know what I mean? Just to kind of spite her.
Yeah. Well, he was like that. He was a bit like that as well. But funnily enough, at that time, which we only learned later, this set a trajectory of my mother's life till the day until the day she died, right? And so we didn't know, but we didn't know whether she was dead or alive yet. But she had an incredibly traumatic experience within that time. She was babysitting for some people, and they came back off the faces and kicked the shit out of her. Yeah? Listen, and I mean, she lived to half inch of a life. She nearly didn't survive.
And with these friends that she was
looking after their children.
But again, they've come back wasted.
Come back wasted off their heads on who God knows what.
Yeah.
And they set on my mum. You know, so this was happening when we didn't know what was going on as well.
Yeah.
So, but wow, yeah.
That is just like one kind of tragic experience after another type thing. Yeah.
So, but back to home life for me.
Yeah.
You know, I started secondary school. I was at the time, you know, I quite quiet, very small, still quite small now, but I was small. So I then started using humour as basically a defence mechanism. I never really got bullied, but I was always very insecure.
Yeah, but I guess you were kind of building up these defences, like almost in anticipation of it, because you knew you were maybe small and vulnerable.
It was just like, right, you need to put up this defence, or whatever,
compensate for it. Yeah.
And so humour got me through. And
what happened to that?
Yeah, I don't know. To be honest, not sure.
Fucking with you, man.
No, I'm fucking with you. By reacting so serious.
I know. I was like, oh no, I'm upset.
I lost it, man. I lost it when I lost my soul.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the first couple of years, man, like my mum still not about. I think we may have like had a bit of contact, but she wasn't around. You know what I mean? Very studious, academic, you know what I mean? First couple of years, I really got my head down. No.
I don't mean that.
Again, what's going on here?
I was thinking you were more the kind of artsy, creative and all that.
But
you know, a bit like myself and not into the sciences and the academia.
No, but I really got stuck into it, and I quite enjoyed school for the first year 7, year 8, call it.
Yeah.
And I was doing well. I was doing well with that. And then year 9, it was predicted A-star student, all that stuff. And then another little bit of stuff happened at home where my brother, who's 2 years older than me, found out my dad wasn't his dad when he thought he was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I knew this.
So you two, you and your middle brother are both still just living with your dad at this point. Your mum's off doing what she's doing.
My older brother's living in Salford.
Yeah,
you know.
and then your middle brother finds out that actually your dad, who he's living with and been brought up with, is his dad, isn't his dad.
Isn't his dad? Yeah, but the reason.
And he's only 2 years older than you.
2 years older than me. So he's gone through all this stuff I've been going through that I've discussed. You know what I mean? Then he'd probably been 14 at the time. My dad. He's realising he's going off the wall because he's smoking weed, he's skiving off school.
Yeah.
Probably to deal with the stuff that's been going on
at home.
Yeah.
And again, just, you know, like growing up in the UK at that kind of era, you know, he's in between you and me. So the streets were awash with, weed and whatever it was. And
again, we're hanging about with these older people that are experimenting, so we're experimenting along with them.
Of course, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So
rock and roll, baby.
My dad kind of got to a point where he didn't know how to handle him, so he pissed up. He told him at the age of 14 that he wasn't his dad. So
not in a kind of right, I want to sit you down and tell you something. It was more like, you're not even my. Yeah, wow.
It might have been a little bit more tactful than that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No. Yeah. But and that kind of fucking, you know,
it sent him off.
Man, it sent him off. So he left. He couldn't handle it. So he left. He left the family at home. So then there's me and my dad.
And I bet you're thinking like, well, is this guy my real dad as well, or
no,
you weren't thinking that.
I kind of knew. I've told my brother this like since. I actually found a birth certificate that had his real dad's name on it.
Oh, before
about a year before.
Oh shit!
And in my head, I was like, I know.
But
it's confusing. This is confusing. So all this is going.
What about the older brother? Sorry, just to get the full scope. Is
they've got the same dad.
They've got the same dad.
They've got the same dad. Yeah.
Right, and then
my dad biologically.
Right. Yeah. I see. But he brought them both up.
Not Damien,
Damien.
Who's my eldest brother. No, he lived with him in Earlham for a little bit, but they didn't get on, so he wasn't his dad. But he did. Joe, who's the one that's a couple of years older than me, classes him as his dad. You know, they made up eventually, but at that point he just went. He had to leave. So then there's me and my dad. I'm probably like 12, still doing all right at school, getting my head down. But then 13, still with my dad, and it's like not really enjoying school anymore. You know, I might have been burying all this shit that's been happening at home, and then it's like this. No, I don't really like this system. Questioning. No, questioning everything. I know. And it was like 13, 14, going out with friends, drinking every single weekend. Yeah. You know? So that's when it became the every single weekend thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Around that age. 14. But before that, I was still drinking. You know, there was a lot of drinking going on. Yeah. But just not as habitually as every single weekend, probably. Yeah.
Not becoming your main pastime. Yeah. You've got free time. Yeah.
But it was like by 14, it was every single weekend. It was. Yeah. Hanging about with my friends, where can we get the drink from? You know, it was all the act of getting people to get it from.
That's the kind of. It's like the chase, isn't it? You know, it's that whole. It's the adventure. It's the excitement of what are we going to get? Who are we getting it from? And you know, I remember one bonfire night, and we must have been about 15, maybe even 14, and we were getting Mad Dog 2020 for the bonfire night, and it was like you could only get it in this place down in Giffnock, I think, and it wasn't that close to us, but we knew these guys that could get it for us, so we put our order in through school, and then I think they rocked up with it on the Friday at school, so we're taking these bottles home with us, and it was like oh yeah, we've not had this MD 2020 before, so it was that whole excitement of. You know, it wasn't just the excitement of the drinking and the effect of the drinking. For us, it was, like, I'm sure it was with you, it was just this whole rebellious, like, we know this is wrong, but it's the excitement in it, you know? And
we're searching for that, It gives you that buzz.
Absolutely buzzing.
It's wanting that buzz, you know?
Yeah.
So where are we now? Where am I now?
So you were saying it started becoming habitual.
And those weekends were heavy. I'd get as wasted as I possibly could, you know. Yeah. So I was being sick. You know, this was a weekend occurrence. I was probably being sick every weekend. My body, from a young age, from that 10 years old, rejected alcohol. Honestly. Mm-hmm. So every time
you're not built for it.
Poison, isn't it?
It's poison. Of course it's going to reject it.
But more so than a lot of people.
Right.
It really did.
But then you're a bit smaller than maybe some of your peers as well. So
but I would drink more. Yeah. More, and I'd just do it until I was absolutely wasted. And, you know, I couldn't. It made me, you know, more confident. Yeah. Although I'd probably turn into a dick after the
initial tipsiness.
Yeah, that. You know what I mean? I probably turned into an obnoxious prick. You know what I mean? Where I'm thinking, no, I'm cool. I can speak to girls. I can, you know, do all this. And you know, you're not what you're thinking you are.
Not at all.
So,
but we all live in that little bubble when we're in it, and
And so then, that was. I'm totally disinterested in school at this point because I'd found basically girls, drink. And at 14 as well, I took my first ecstasy tablet, so I'd found those school was bullshit. You know what I mean? These were my gods.
This is it. There's nothing, nothing on you. Yeah.
You know, I had my first out of body experience actually on that ecstasy tablet. You know, and I'm not condoning it, kids, but it was quite an experience.
What was it? Do you remember?
A Mitsubishi.
Yeah, of course it was.
And I only had a half. It was when they were good.
Mitsubishi Turbos. Yeah.
Well, this was probably about 1490. 96, yeah, 96.
No, 98.
98, yeah, 98.
I was
France
14
98, yeah,
four.
sorry, yeah. But we had a mate who had a converted like loft space basically above his garage, and honestly, 20 of us would gather in that, and that'd be the spot, you know. So, and we'd all of us we were just
music
trying to search for some music,
and,
little ghetto blaster, and just getting wasted. All of us, so all searching for something.
Yeah.
Finding it with each other. You know, so again, every weekend was a party. You know what I mean? And it was excess.
Yeah, and like, you know, although you're saying that, like, you know, at the beginning, I suppose your body was rejecting it and you were sick and this, that, and the other, but you were getting wasted. You weren't drinking for the pleasure of the bouquet of the wine or whatever.
No,
you know, you were waiting to get completely.
We weren't swilling the wine about in the mouth. And going,
no, you were just chucking it back.
I'm getting this down there to get wasted.
And that's the thing, like, you know, and we were having a good time. Like, yeah, I was maybe coming home sometimes, you know, and getting caught drunk or whatever, and I'd get into trouble. I think I got grounded a couple of times. So my parents were on at me about that. But I was having a good time because it's what we were all doing in the 90s. You know, we were all it was just this party element of teenagers, and that's what we were doing. We wanted to be growing up so much quicker than maybe people before us or whatever.
And that's what you want, innit? When you're a kid, you want to be grown up so much. And then you grow up and you're like, oh, shit, I'm a kid again.
Exactly. But I think, like, as the generation's grown, like, I think I was reading a book a while back, and the term teenager was coined in, I think, the 50s by, and it was in America, and it was basically coined it was a capitalist thing to sell people this idea of this in-between stage before, like, you have to go to work. Because, before, you know, Victorian times and the war times, we had, like, you would go to school till you were 16 and then you were down the pit or the mine or whatever, or if you were, you know, academic, then you would go to university. And it was just, you were from school to working, and in one form or another. There wasn't that in-between stage where we get to develop who we are as a person and have a chill-out time. Now it's getting longer and longer because people have gap years and this and that, or they just don't work. But there's that whole, we were getting from the 60s to the 90s, which is only 30 years. It's nothing. We were kind of taking that to the extreme, I think, by this whole decade almost of when we were just wanting to be carefree and not have any cares in the world. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's very resonant on how we behaved in the 90s. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, of course it does.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that there wasn't like this whole group of people as teenagers until like the 50s. Do you know what I mean? It's bizarre. And now it's like this whole, you know, it's just such a short period of your life to be a teenager, but so much happens in that time, and it does mold who you.
Changing, you're developing, your mind's changing, everything.
But also, our brains. I think someone was saying to me that our brains don't fully develop until we're 28. So from the time we start drinking at 14, that's another whole 100% of our life again to 28. Well, for me and yourself, we were just drinking, you know, and
what's that doing?
What's that doing?
Your internal development.
Well, it's creating this crutch that we rely on the alcohol for social, you know, anxiety, social occasions, social crutches.
And that's what I could not. And this is at 14, 15, getting to 16. I could not go to a social event. That's at this age. I wasn't even of a legal age to drink without drink. At the revision weekend, at school, when I was 15 for our GCSEs, I felt I had to take vodka. Yeah, this is a revision weekend.
I get
for
you.
studying for our GCSEs, and I couldn't have gone that full weekend without getting wasted on one of the nights, which I did, because I snuck a bottle of vodka in.
It's absolutely insane, isn't it? Yeah. So we've just Sam and I have just been up Snaith Fell, which people that don't know, it's the only mountain on the island. It's over 1,000 feet. I don't know if that's too high or whatever it is to be a mountain. So it's one of them. So we've just been up. Bit of a kind of cloudy, wettish, brisk day, but it's blown the cobwebs away. Sam has basically come over, asked him if he wanted to come on the podcast, and he said, yes, I do. I'm having a bit of a soul-searching time, but I have one condition to doing the podcast. And I was like, oh yeah, man, what's that? And he goes, that I come over and do it in person, because I want to come over and see you. We haven't seen each other in 5 years. So, it's been great. Sam and I are we knew each other. He was one of the counsellors in Ocean Recovery, and I was one of the inpatients. So we're kind of getting to know each other as just on peer level now, which has been fantastic this weekend. So, as I say, we've been up the mountain, and Sam, where were we in your story?
Yeah, just to carry on from that though, it is great just to actually, like you say, on the peer level rather than counsellor. Inmate.
I'll go with that. Yeah,
there is that little bit of a barrier in there. So
of course.
And with that,
But we managed to keep in touch, and I think when I kind of requested you on Facebook and all that after it, you were like, I don't think we're not really allowed to, but you're a sound guy, and I think it's okay now because you've been out of the treatment for a while. So I'm glad we did.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've kept in contact since.
Yeah.
And now this is the first time though that we've properly met up, and we've just when did I get here last night?
Last night, yeah.
And we've just chatted ever since.
Non-stop, mate. So, I mean, obviously it's good that we're recording some of it, but there's been so much good shit that we've been chatting about that's not on record.
We probably have about 50 hours worth eventually.
It'd be a whole season of the podcast.
So I think it was at the revision weekend, so I couldn't even go to revision weekend without drinking. I just want to go back a little bit though with that period between my brother leaving, because he found out my dad wasn't his dad, and the time me and my father spent, within them years, my dad was trying to be, he had to be quite sensible, because he was looking after two of us, and then he was just looking after me. He had to get me up for school. I was the one for wanting to get up, so he had to get up every morning, get me up, make the tea when I got back from school, all that stuff. So he was being the parent, he was being the mum and the dad, So within them few years, we became really, really pretty close, you know what I mean? And we developed our relationship. My father, which I will say was a shy husband, but he was a good dad to me.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And I can say that it's just the truth. It's just being honest.
Yeah.
So now, 15, I found my mum again.
Right.
My brother, during this period, my brother had found my mum.
Yeah.
She was living in a place not too far from where we were living actually, and he went back to live with her. So then I found him. So I started visiting my mum again when I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I kind of wanted to spend a bit more time with my mum and my brother because I'd not seen them for so long.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of leaving my dad behind at the family home that had been the family home. That there were some good times, you know what I mean? But he was there on his own, and at this period, his drinking escalated.
Yeah.
To a degree of daily drinking, he became known basically. It's a little tiny town we lived in. He was a drunk.
Right.
But I wanted to spend time with my mum and my brother. And at my mum's, to be honest, she kind of gave us free rein, and I think it was a little bit of guilt because she felt guilty about leaving us, so she just wanted us near. So she let us kind of do what we wanted, so we could drink. You know, at the time we were taking drugs. It was just free rein. She said, "I'd rather you do it here, safe, than out there." You know, and again, with a little bit of guilt. She didn't want to be the disciplinarian and all that stuff. So again, it's weekends. At this point, I got into my first serious relationship at 16. I just left school. I completed my GCSEs, but I got one of them. Could have done better.
Report card type.
Because I couldn't be asked.
Could apply himself.
I didn't do any of the coursework. I went to the exams.
Yeah.
You know, I did the minimal. Yeah. You know, so I got through school, but at that point it was just I have no interest. So flitting about between my mum's and my dad's. My dad's getting worse at this point.
How's his creativity at this point?
Stumped, I'd say. He started losing like the jobs that he had for magazines and stuff like that. He wasn't the hot topic. Yeah. Should we say at that time? He was always trying to create, and he was doing like big abstracts stuff like
that. But the alcohol and drugs was getting in the way of it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you can't when you're drinking continuously, and it was special room tenant super and stuff like that at this point. So you're not. He had periods of not drinking, but the majority of the time, he was. Yeah. I'd gone into this relationship. It was love, of course. You know, I'm not even saying that. I'm being serious. This relationship will go on to say lasted 4 years. You know what I mean? So it's quite a long time.
Yeah, for that age.
When you're young.
Yeah.
But like cocaine started coming into the equation. You know, when I was like 17, 18. When I'd left school, I didn't want to get a job, didn't desire getting a job. I was still trying to find myself. I did start a college course of engineering, but just did about a month and then thought, fuck this, can't be asked. You know, literally, I just couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, but and also we've got that freedom because it's not school, so it's like you can go to lectures if you want. You don't have to, so you just can't crack on, carry on, and then it's like, well, I'll just go down the pub or hang out with my mates or smoke some weed. And I get it.
I prefer doing that.
And your girlfriend at the time, was she in the same kind of scene, drinking, bit of cocaine?
Drinking a little bit, not the cocaine. She wasn't a fan of it, and she didn't like me on it. Which is fair enough, you know what I mean. And although we were together 4 years, throughout that, my drinking was just progressing and causing more and more problems, you know. And when she pick up on these problems, it'd be like, fucking hell, no, what you on about? You know, having a go at her.
Yeah, because it's not your fault, and she's
when it's true, though, all of what she was saying, you know, was true, and it was better. Eventually, it was the dismantling of that relationship. My drinking was the end of it. You know what I mean? There was one point when I was visiting her, that she lived at her mum's, and I was drinking 8 cans of lager a night. You know, and that, some people, that's normal, but that shit ain't normal.
And let me ask, what lager was it?
Oh, it was Carlin at the time.
Carlin, okay.
Yeah. It's weak, piss.
It's weak,
like,
but 8 cans at 16,
cans,
17.
This is, so I'm going to visit her.
Yeah.
I probably had a couple beforehand.
Yeah.
And this again, though, I think it was, you know, a bit of confidence sexually.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
at that age, we don't know what we're doing.
It kind of needed a bit of a drink, you know. You know, we had a healthy life in that respect, you know what I mean? But what kind of, like, clicked in me when I'd finished my cans and I'd be hiding them in the blue bin, but underneath everything, so Mum wouldn't see them. Because if she saw them, she'd be like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is not right. So, again, gradually, things are progressing drink-wise. Within this period, my dad loses the family home. His drinking's like uncontrollable. At 16, I was seriously serious. I know we're going back and forth a little bit. It's not quite linear, this, but you'll get the point. at 16, I'm really worried about my dad. And
so where's he? If he's lost the family home, where's he going to live? Sorry, at this point.
Well, he found a little flat. No,
Yeah,
it was like a house on. It was like a flat on 3 floors.
Right, okay.
Next to a river.
Yeah.
But that was when I was about 18.
Uh-huh.
When it all
started
collapsed.
imploding.
And he basically didn't make anything off the house and stuff like that. He just couldn't keep up the mortgage payment.
Yeah, and I guess that's down to the abuse, the alcohol abuse and substance abuse.
Absolutely. It was direct consequence of that, because he wasn't doing enough work, he wasn't finding enough work, and he lost that, so he ended up
and any disposable cash. Well, it's not even disposable, is it? It's just going and drinking, isn't it?
Oh, still giving me bits of money, He was always trying to provide for me.
Yeah.
But there was, I remember one Christmas, again, I'm going back and forth, but it was 16, and my dad was like, at the house, there's no gas on, there's no central heating on. I don't even know if there was any electric on at the time, and he was just there in a sleeping bag. This was Christmas Day, man. He was just there in a sleeping bag on the couch, keeping warm, so I went down, visited.
Yeah.
Just to say hello, and then I was back out. I was more interested.
You're like, I don't want to see this.
It wasn't pleasant.
Not pleasant.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So so that was the start of the demise of that house and everything, and then.
And you're at an age where you're not able to know how to, I guess the word, protect and look after your parents, because you're just trying to make your own way in the world at this point.
Yeah,
and it's how you're not able to go in and go, right, come on, Dad, let's get the heating on and get this sorted out. Let's tidy up in here. You're just like, whoa.
Yeah,
I don't want to be in this situation.
Yeah,
so
I
I'm
need
just
to get out. I want to go back where I feel safe with my new girlfriend and my friends.
Yeah.
Where that element of belonging.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But yeah, again, with the relationship, within time, it was just destroyed by my drinking. It's simple as that. So we're going to where I'm 20 now. So that related. In fact, we had a couple of breakups, but then there was the final breakup when I was 20, and that because over the years I'd not built up any emotional resilience or intelligence, or the only coping mechanism I knew was at the bottom of the drink, the bottom of the bottle, bottom of the can. So what did I do? I just went full pelt at that. Drunken phone calls, drunken bloody text messages and all that stuff, and it just wasn't good. But I had no emotional intelligence to deal with that, and again, my drinking progressed. And I ended up getting, about 6 months after that, I ended up getting a flat in the middle of a place called Waterfoot, which just turned into a kind of party flat, really. And it was just,
you're still young, and this is what all your friends and that are doing.
Because I'd flitted about from my parents, from 16 to 20. So I'd never had my own place. So it was like, woo!
This is the freedom.
Yeah.
I can do what I want. And even if there was a bit of an issue, which there probably wasn't at that age, but, in normal terms it probably was. But you're seeing what your mates are doing, so you're in that scene, you're doing it. Nobody's really growing up at that age.
No.
Nobody's getting mortgages or developing their careers. So we're all just in it at the same time doing the party thing.
Yeah.
And
enjoying it. I can't look back and say I didn't enjoy it.
No, of course
I did. But the whole, there was a pub just across basically from where the flat was, and that was basically my second home, because at the time I'd got a decorating job, painting and decorating. That was when I was 18, and I was doing that on and off. Go in, earn a little bit of money, a few days. That was my drinking money, pay me rent, blah 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 blah. But there was a pub just near the flat, and that was basically the second home, because I wouldn't go home after work. I'd be in the boozer, and there was a few close friends at the time that we'd met.
Yeah,
and that'd be it. That'd be the life. Get a bit more wasted at the weekends.
And tell me, at that age, would you be okay about going into the boozer on your own and having a drink?
I don't know. I don't know if I ever did. Well, yeah, I would have done after work at times.
Yeah. And then maybe like people are coming down later, but you still go in and get yourself a pint and all that.
Because I wanted that drink, you know.
Yeah, because I was saying to people the other day, like I always had a mate or a few mates who would be like, right, what time are you getting down the pub at? And I'd be like, well, you know, whenever we said like 6, 7, whatever. And they'd be like, all right, well, make sure you're there because I don't want to be walking in my own, like, you know, Billy No Mates. And I'd be like, yeah, all right. But I'd probably get there like half an hour before because I'd probably want to get a couple of drinks in before they arrived. Or any other time, I would be so comfortable in a pub on my own
with the drink.
and have a drink. yeah, of course, and have a drink. And then I would just, you know, start chatting to the local barflies and stuff. I never had a problem with being in a pub on my own, but I know a lot of my mates, they would only be in a pub with their mates because they didn't want to look like Billy No Mates. Me with my drink. My drink was my mate, so I was fine, you know.
That was kind of your confidant, innit? You know what I mean? But at the time as well, the pub that I was speaking of, the people, the girls behind the bar I knew, and they'd become friends, and they were back at the flat and stuff like that. So, you know, it was, that was it. That, like you say, the drinks your friend.
Home from home, you know isn't it? Yeah.
So a lot of debauchery, blah blah at the flat. My drinking was escalating. I started missing days at work because I'd been drinking so much the night before. I'd feel like death, you know what I mean? So I couldn't go in and paint a fucking house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I suppose also with jobs like that, you don't have to, you know, be going in as, you know, suited and booted and looking as fresh as you might do with some jobs.
No.
So, and you're kind of your own boss, so you're kind of just, you know, you can basically go in looking like shit and you're all right.
But at a period of time when I lived in that flat, because I started decorating when I was like 18, and I hadn't really taken time off until it got to like I was 20. And I spoke to him, and he said, "Right, you've had more days off than you've been in this year. I'm going to have to take you off the books."
Right.
And then that was me. I was
not
like,
even a bit. I mean, had you had warnings at that point, or do you reckon? Or
not that I remember, but it was just that phone call. I remember sat in a flat, and he was like, "I can't do this. I can't do this.
Can't rely on you
anymore."
Yeah.
And it was oh shit. And it was that realisation of it's really having an effect on my life here now. It's not just the weekend. It's not just feeling a little bit rubbish. It's having that ripple effect on work, you know, my income.
But, and I mean, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but like whenever I lost jobs at that point, it wasn't like, oh my God, what am I going to do for another job? My only thought was, not even where am I going to get money for my rent. It was more where am I going to get money for
your drink.
My drink.
Yeah. That was the main.
That was
thing.
the main thing.
That was it. And then your rent was like secondary.
Food, third.
Tertiary. Maybe.
Yeah.
Tertiary. Yeah. That's it. I was going to say thirdary.
Thirdary good as well.
You got to understand it though.
Tertiary.
Yeah. So even priorities were changing.
Yeah.
You know, but not quite. I wasn't quite waking up the next day going, I need a drink. Maybe on the weekends, you know, if you had a heavy Friday night, Saturday morning, if there was beer left,
warm beer on a Saturday morning.
I'd like in that place or places.
Hair of the dog that bit you.
Hair of the dog with Dockers in it.
Yeah.
No, do you know what I mean? When you've used it, this is the sort of shit you end up doing, isn't it? You use a can as an ashtray.
Yeah.
And then you're a bit disorientated. You're waking up. You have a swig of what you think's just beer, and there's ash and shit in it, man. That's rank.
Yeah, but you think that would kind of go, I need to sort my life out.
No, it's just like, that's a bit rubbish. Where's
the other one? Try another one.
Got a fag end in it.
Yeah, and it's not even a can that you're not even looking for a can that you've freshly opened. You've picked one up and you've gone, oh, there's something in that.
I need that. I need that.
Yeah. It's, you know what, that whole lifestyle of waking up with cans and stuff and people and bodies just all around me, that was like the embodiment of who I was in my 20s, because that's what we did. And to me, that was like living. That was, you know, rock and roll, baby. That was like, yeah, I'm living life to the extreme.
I'm
Do you know
living the dream.
I'm living the dream. I know. It's so weird, isn't it? How warped our kind of sensibilities and our thought process is, that this is actually how, I thought in my head, I'm getting the most out of my short time on this planet.
Yeah.
You know? It's so warped. Yeah. So you're now out of work?
Out of work, well, the odd days here and there. Out of work. The flat is just a party flat. There was good times, and eventually lost that. Lost the flat. I had to go and live back with my mother. Then, by this time, my dad had got a place round the corner from my mum that I found for him, actually. I found this place that I spoke of before, flat on 3 floors, lived by the river, which, like, quite funny. We used to blast London Calling out, and there's like, live by the river. It was fucking brilliant. We actually lived by a river. I ended up living next door to him, by the way, but that comes later.
And how was your mum and dad's relationship at this point?
Weirdly enough, they couldn't be in a marriage and they couldn't be in that relationship, but later on they'd become fucking friends, you know what I mean? They became, best friends, and they loved each other.
They
loved each other massively, and they'd still drink together and stuff. You know, my dad would go around to my mum's and they'd have a drink and it'd get a bit leery. Mum would kick him out, but
they still enjoyed each other's company.
They were friends. You know what I mean? But I like, again, from being 16, I always had this worry for my dad, just because of his excess, you know. And sometimes I'd go into his house, and it was quiet. I'd think, shit, this is a time. You know, this is a time. This is something that was in the back of my mind since being 16. You know, and I felt it so strongly. I was convinced it was going to happen.
One time that you went round, you were going to find them,
And after I eventually, because I went back to my mum's, so then it was just I could drink there, blah 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 blah, and then I eventually found a house next door. To my dad, which was round the corner from my mum, so it was all quite close.
You want to be in the locality.
And he used to join us, my dad, like on mad nights when there was people around at mine and stuff, and blasting music and all that. And he'd enjoy the younger people, because like some people his age, you just think they're fucking boring, you know.
But he was still in that kind of mindset, you know. Like we all still think we're all 19. Do you know what I mean? No matter how old you are, still want to party with the youngsters.
So again, like, but this house became another place where we'd gather and we'd drink and we'd get off our heads, and I think I'm about 20, 23 here. And we'd had a particularly mad weekend. Like, I'd nip round to my dad's, and he wasn't too well. He'd been on a mad bender. He'd just had an exhibition, like a big, massive, not big and massive, but it was one of the biggest exhibitions he'd had in like 10 years.
Wow!
So he had a massive turnout. So many people turned up, and he was buzzing. He had plans of doing more abstract work, because that's where his like heart. Was
the most creative that he could
stuff.
be.
I want to do all these abstract, things. And over the years, he'd been into hospital. He'd kind of got a few years before, like this period, he'd been into hospital with like liver damage. So it started with the process with cirrhosis. He came out, he was yellow, but he'd give it up for like a few months, and then he started recovering. But then ultimately, he picked back up. So like, he'd had this mad binge. So he went down, and his bedroom was kind of downstairs. So went down, seen him, and he was like in a bit of a rattle state. So get him a couple of cans, give him a drink, and like we were partying next door. we were partying next door, and we'd had this mad weekend, and then I was checking. He was ill. He was shaking again, just a little bit of booze. He was spewing it all back up. we're still at it, you know what I mean? And then like Monday morning, like went in to check on him, went down the stairs and found him dead.
Oh shit!
Yeah, and he because of his liver, he had the kind of varicose veins in the throat that come from your liver. I can't remember the exact terminology of them, but they'd ruptured, and bang, he was gone, and that fucking traumatized me. You know what I mean?
Because were you not in the midst of like partying? And
I was in the midst
you're
of
probably
it
still
myself.
pissed or whatever.
Oh yeah, so this was Monday morning, but I was actually going to get up and go to work because I was working with a mate of mine at the time, and then this.
Yeah.
And my brother was living at my mum's, and like I come across him. You know what I mean? It touched his hand. You know what I mean? And it was fucking cold, and it's like shit. He's gone. He's gone.
It's been gone a while, yeah.
So I like literally ran round to where my brother was, and I was like, fuck, man, he's gone. What you on about? Like, Dad, because we called it, they'd made up again at this point. Yeah. And I was like, he's fucking gone, you know. And then obviously the phone calls were made and stuff I can't really remember, you know.
Yeah, of course, because you're in that trauma state, yeah.
So yeah, from that though, I started spiraling, and yeah, it was a tough one.
Yeah,
because me and it, like, it felt as well. When he passed, it felt like part of my soul had been ripped out.
Yeah,
you know, we had that
bond, that connection. Yeah,
although it was a nightmare.
Yeah, but he's your dad. You know what I mean? And even though he'd been doing all this and been that, you know, alcoholic, whatever, he was still your dad, and you still had that bond where he was still like almost like a mate. You're saying he's coming around and partying with you guys in the party house and all that, and it's like, even though he was a nightmare to live with at certain points, you still have that closeness with you. It's not like he's gone, do you know what, I'm a drinker, I'm gonna fuck you guys off, and I'm not gonna speak to you again. He still wants to be in your life,
absolutely,
you know?
And we'd got concerts together and stuff like that. So no, he was definitely involved. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that,
and the loss of a parent's gonna do that to anyone. It's gonna, you know, completely destroy you, and especially at such a young age when you know that's not, you know, kind of the normal chronology of life as it should be. Do you know what I mean? And then you're already in that scene and that drinking area in your life. Of course you're going to use it as a reason, and it's just going to, because you know that's the only thing that's going to be able to heal.
You think, because that again, you know, to the age of 23, I might have been 24, but
and how old was he?
65.
So young,
man, young, very young. But the way he went at it, he was a machine with it for quite a number of years. Yeah. It was gonna catch up with him, and again, this feeling that I had in my being at the age of 16 came to pass. You know what I mean? But it was no less shocking and traumatic. You know what I mean?
But like, as you and I know, both getting sober at fairly young ages, you know, you were obviously a lot younger than me, but still got our lives ahead of us. For someone that's still doing that at, say, 55, 60, 63, he knows in his head that this is damaging him, this is not good. But to get out of that at that longevity of abuse and, you know, just continuality with it.
You know, because obviously when we did it, it seems like an impossible task at times. So even a little bit older, a little bit fucking more, like, you probably just think, no.
And also the mental aspect of it, like, you're thinking, well, I'm an old-ish man now anyway, like, what have I got to kind of get sober for? I'm already, most of my life is behind me at this point. And then to think, like, how can I make that leap to then start getting sober, because the mental aspect of it, you're just like, what's the point?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And we're like that at such an early age,
Yeah,
but then
of course.
luckily we did. Yeah, man, I'm so sorry. It's just tragic, and obviously even more upsetting and traumatic the fact that you were the one to find him as well.
Yeah. And like with it, I carried, because like what I missed there is I did say to him, because I'd seen him like this a lot, you know, when he's coming off his binges. So I'd seen him in the state. I saw him in like over the weekend when I popped in and just checked on him.
Yeah.
And I actually said, "Dad, do you want me to get you an ambulance?" And he said no. So I couldn't go against that, you know.
No,
Dad telling me no.
Yeah,
I'm still only a fucking young man. I'm going to listen to what my dad's saying.
Yeah.
So with that, and then him dying, I carried so much fucking guilt.
Yeah.
Like I felt nearly.
What could I have
illogically,
done?
yeah,
Of
I
course,
should have
you-
done more.
There's no
you
way
know,
you could have done more.
but I should have rung an ambulance. I could have saved his life. And for the next
Could have, would have, should have.
few years, I carried that
Yeah.
heavily. You know what I mean? And I
And
was
drinking on it.
drinking
using
on it. I was just more and more now. I was just more and more. I was already spiraling. You know, and my dad actually did say to me shortly before he died, "I don't know what to do with you." So I was already on that
and from
path.
him, where he's at in his life, to be saying that to you
is pretty. So that is where I was at with it and what he was seeing, which is pretty shitty, you know. And I wish to a degree, although, and from what I now believe, he's here, he's about, you know what I mean. He's seen what I've become now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you know,
without a doubt.
But yeah, so for him to have said that to me, it's like shit. I was in a spiral, but his death kind of then catapulted me into the abyss, man.
Yeah.
Like honestly, so the next few years are crazy.
So welcome back. We've just been to Laxey, or Laxey. £15 to go up the wheel, even with that. I think it was £14 with the Manx National Heritage card, which I have. Now, you know, it's not an advert for Manx National Heritage, but I think that's a bit of a ridiculous price to go and climb up the amazing water wheel. But yeah, it was nice to see it though, wasn't it, Sam?
Yeah, it was nice, but the £15 entrance fee is a little steep.
A little bit steep, yeah.
But we did use their facilities because we needed to urinate.
That's
and bumped
exactly
into
true.
some friends that I'd made on the ferry.
I'm like, what, Sam? You know people on the island? I know the island's small and we all know each other, but it's that's cracking, mate. Yeah,
yeah. Probably see them again.
Absolutely, yeah. So I don't know how that's going to transition from what we were just kind of discussing. Obviously, that tragic story about finding your father and all the kind of trauma that kind of then came after that. So do you want to kind of talk a little bit about how your kind of drinking and debauchery kind of escalated and progressed after that?
Yeah, indeed, man. As I said before, there was that guilt. There was the guilt that, if I'm honest, didn't shake for many years. So again, I've not built up any emotional intelligence, no resilience, nothing. All I do is for coping with anything is drink. You know what I mean? So hence, lose my father, my fucking best mate, soulmate, if you wish. What am I going to do? I turned to the drink. So obviously there were the funeral arrangements to be made, which it's all very vague. People helped with it, but I do remember though at the funeral, it was like me and my brothers sat at the front. My mum didn't make it; she wasn't doing too great at the time. But I chose the music, and picked Eddie Cochran, Come On Everybody. So like with that, come on.
Yeah, yeah.
And then in the middle of it, dum, 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 and then it goes, woo, come on everybody.
Yeah.
We were all doing it. It's not like we're all laughing at it, like laughing at his funeral basically. But
He would have loved that
he
though.
would have loved it.
Yeah.
He would have loved it. And his best mate, who sadly passed away like not too long ago, like a week or so ago, Johnny Green spoke and that, and he said some beautiful words. So yeah, the funeral was over, and I at the time I was living, as I said, I got a place next door to where he was living, and I just couldn't handle it.
No, because you're right in that vicinity, the space.
I still had the key for his, and there was one point where I was spending a lot of time at my mum's, and I just needed to go back round like to my dad's, and honestly, I went back round into the spot basically. It'd all been cleared out, but in the spot where he'd passed, and I put a record on Cyndi Lauper, I Drove All Night, which we had a massive connection like with music, and that was a fucking song we used to blast, and I just played that, sat there and fucking booed my eyes out. You know, so to a degree, I was purging a little bit. I was actually, trying to heal a little bit.
Yeah.
But all still absolutely tanked up.
Yeah.
And, you know, it came with drinking. You know, I don't think I could have released that sober. You know what I mean?
No, and it. Do you know what? Like, for all I say about alcohol, for those times and that, it can help for that tiny fraction of time when you can just escape and be out of your head.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's consistent with us, that's where it starts to go downhill, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a consistent wanting to escape, not wanting to deal with anything. You need it for day to day. You need it to feel normal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So from that point, it's for the next few years, I have to admit, incredibly hazy, because I was just drinking. I'd got into a brief relationship with the daughter of people that were looking after the artwork, which it was brief. She ended it because of my drink.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So again, it's destroying.
But you're not realising that.
Oh
at
no!
the time,
what do you mean? No,
she's just not the right one
fault.
for me.
Yeah. It's all that
Excuses,
you know what I mean?
and
yeah.
Denial.
But at the time, because I couldn't live next door, and I got some inheritance from my dad, and it was to the tune of 12 grand or something. Which at the time, 2008, was
and at your age,
not too bad. 23. I think I was 24 actually. So I could have. Yeah. Well, but here we go.
I was going to say, like, you bought some stocks and you invested that wisely.
And, you know, it served me well up until now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, that coming year, I couldn't live in the house, but I still hadn't cleared my dad's out fully.
Yeah.
Right? So I was renting 2 houses, and I had to pay for my dad. He would give me a bit of leeway, but it started dragging on the time because I wasn't organising anything. Then I started renting another property closer to my mum's. Mm-hmm. So at one point, I was paying for 3 properties.
Like, I understand you were paying for your dad's one and the one that you were living in, but what was the third one for?
That was the one next door to my dad's. So I there was a new one.
Yeah, what was the new one? You were going to move into
That's
that
the one
eventually?
I was going to move into.
Right.
But because I hadn't cleared all the other ones out, they were all there, and I was paying for 3.
Right.
At once. So this money already is just getting dwindled away. Yeah. You know what I mean? But eventually I cleared it all out, and I got into the one house, which is literally 2 minutes away from my mother's.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But again, just through this, you know, I wasn't working. I had a little bit of inheritance. You know, so it was just the next year, drink, and then I looked at the bank, and it was just like, shit, man, I spent 6 grand.
Oh, and how long?
Probably about 3 or 4 months.
Jesus, right?
You know,
right,
and at the time, six grand now might not seem that much, but at the time that was quite a bit.
It's a lot now, mate.
No, of course it is.
Yeah.
But I had, and it was literally just on surviving. So I wasn't like being flamboyant or anything. I wasn't buying decent shit. Where
no, but you were drinking.
Yeah. I was drinking. So I was slowly but surely pissing that away.
Yeah.
You know, and at this point, it was like.
Did you buy anything nice?
Not that I can remember.
No, not that you've still got.
Not that I can remember. I might have bought a computer.
Right.
So that was something.
Yeah, that was something substantial. The physical,
physical that I could say. That's what I got to show for it.
Yeah.
I may have give my brother a little bit.
That wasn't a
$6
grand computer.
No, so it was literally just living because I wasn't working. I was trying to grieve, but just getting pissed. Getting pissed.
And I guess from my kind of past history, and I didn't get in a situation where I had that kind of money, you know, but I think my mindset would have been, I'll sort it out down the road, but for now, while I'm grieving, I'm gonna just take the foot off the pedal a little bit and use that money to survive and pay my rent. But then that can quite quickly become a habit because you get used to it.
And also I've got a really good excuse to just get pissed all the time.
Yeah, because you're not working.
Dad, man,
Well,
you're
not using it as an excuse, and it's a reason because you're grieving with what you know best, and that's to get pissed and get out your head.
The crutch.
Yeah.
You know, so but by now, you know, I'd started basically falling out with family members, and mainly my mum. You know, and I'll be honest about this. I was not pleasant to my mum. Like, I'd go around and we'd get drunk, and I wasn't a nice person. I'd give her shit.
Yeah.
I'd give her shit, but this was all held on resentment that I held on to from when she left.
Yeah.
But at the time, I had no understanding of that, and I had no understanding of why I was angry at her. But I'd kind of take shit out on her.
Well, you were hurting as well.
Yeah, and all of it though, with it was a self-loathing. I hated myself, and it just came out to the people closest to me.
To the people that you love, without a doubt.
So again, like with hazy memories, it got to me just drinking every day, and it got to the point where I wasn't washing, you know, I literally wasn't washing, wasn't looking after myself, I was pissing myself, I was literally pissing myself, shitting myself. This is all through drink, you know what I mean? But then just, you know, I'll change my shorts.
Exactly, you're not thinking,
drink, you know
there's an issue here.
No,
I'm not able to, I'm 24, 25, maybe
25 now, 20, maybe 26.
And I'm not able to keep control of my bodily functions.
But no, it's
it's fine, I just clear myself up and then get back on it.
And with that, every single day throughout my drinking career, I'm going to call it, I was sick, violently sick. Yeah. Every single day. And this was even in the early days, the weekend binges that I had, I was always sick.
Yeah, because
all the time.
That's in my understanding and experience that I had towards the end. I would wake up in the morning and I would be retching in the bathroom because there was nothing in me. I hadn't been eating, so I'd be retching in the bathroom, physically sick. I would get some vodka and I would glug that down, like just straight from the bottle. I would bring some of it up, and then I would glug again, and then I would manage to keep it down. Now, my eyes are streaming, my face is red, and I'm just a wreck. But I knew that I needed to get the vodka in me to make me feel better. And it did, and it worked.
To make you feel normal.
To make me feel normal. I'm not drinking to get pissed at this point. I'm drinking to feel like some semblance of human again. So I totally get where you're coming from. You're just physically sick every day because you're going through withdrawal.
At
that early age.
You know, so when the money was around, I was you know, drinking Guinness and stuff like that. But the money quickly dwindled. Yeah, the money. I pissed it all up against the wall.
So what was your sorry to jump in there, but what was your drink of choice at that point? Or just everything.
If I had everything and anything. But if I had money,
you're feeling
I love
flush.
Guinness. You know, it was like a meal in a
Right.
can. So I'm getting my iron in me. You know, that's a good justification.
Yeah,
I was getting a lot of iron out of the Guinness.
And it feels like a meal, doesn't it?
Even though I looked so anemic, you know, it wasn't giving me anything. I wasn't getting any goodness out of that.
No.
You know, but it was Guinness when I had money, and then eventually, which I'll come to, I started on the white cider. When the money dwindled,
the white lightning and the
real
frosty jack,
cheap, horrendous white lightning, white carbon white, all that crap, any of that.
Yeah, what is it? Like 4 litres for about four quid,
and it's probably still that now. I honestly don't know.
I had that towards the end of my career in drinking, and I was like, oh yeah, that's cheap, I'll get that, and it does the job. What is it, like 8% or something?
Yeah,
for 4 litres,
it's not seen an apple.
Not even been an apple chucked at it.
No, it's not been near an apple.
It's not been near an apple.
It doesn't know that
pure
you know,
chemicals,
which is stripping the hell out of your inside.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So again, this is my life. This is my life. I've got this house. I've got these plans of doing work in it and stuff. It's a renter, but I've, you know, all these plans.
Yeah.
It's nice, your home. Blah. It never to materialise and never to come to fruition.
How are your relationships with like friends and partners at this point, or
no partners on the
solo?
scene? No partners on the scene at this point. Because, well, no, sorry, I did in 2010. That was a couple of years after my dad passed.
Right.
Yeah, you're all right there. Did have a relationship to a nice girl, but I ended it. I went away to Japan, again pissed. He nearly didn't let me on the plane. This was to do with like promoting my dad's artwork, and I got so drunk the night before, I was still pissed the next day, that I literally stumbled onto the plane, and the guy that was with me had to like say, "Oh no, he'll be all right." They nearly kind of
stopped him.
He kind of convinced him that no, he'll get his head down, blah blah blah. So it's just like this chance of a lifetime to go to Japan and promote your dad's artwork, and I just all I was thinking about was drink, and I really didn't get on the plane.
Yeah, just trying to blow it all, self-sabotage, isn't it? So you were kind of like, I suppose, like a bit of a pinnacle figure in your dad's art legacy type foundation at that point, or
I was
just promoting it.
Yeah, but there was people looking after it.
Yeah,
you know,
because you weren't probably able to.
I wasn't. I was unable to do it. So they were asking me permission for certain things, and I'd agree to it. That's really
So
I had involved.
So it was all left to you in his will as such. Yeah. Okay.
But thankfully, these two, this couple, Julian and Jackie, who become friends, have looked after it over the years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if that wouldn't have been the case, God knows where the artwork had been now.
You probably sold it
I
all
would have done for a tenner.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, literally, I would have sold it for a few $100.
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, it's just getting messier and messier. I'm starting to feel the effects with, you know, my bodily functions aren't working properly. I'm not working.
And is your drinking solo at this point, or are you still going down the pub with mates? Or
that had ended. It was at home.
It's just alone.
It was at home, and thankfully, a friend of mine who's still a dear friend, you know what I mean, was still coming to see me, and I'm probably like 27 here, but he's coming to see me. He's probably the only one that can handle me right now, you know, for a few hours. You know, everybody else kind of like, they can't, like, I wasn't getting on with my mum, although I was still going around getting drunk. My brother had started, like, this is one that's a couple of years older. Yeah. Just like, I can't handle you anymore. I was being an idiot with my mum, so that got his back up. Yeah. So it was just like, my world was getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and then I just hated myself more and more and more and more. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
And it's quite a young age for it to have escalated so quick. And I'm guessing, the catalyst was the death of your father.
Yeah.
You know, my drinking, like, it got worse over the years, but it was a slow and steady kind of escalation until I was you know, just about 40, and then that's when it kind of came to its crux. But
yeah,
with
this
you,
is all
this
in,
was
a,
all
in,
in
a few years.
Yeah.
5 years, say, overall. 5 years, I'd say.
Yeah.
So yeah, my world's getting smaller and smaller. I've got this mate who comes round, you know, and something else happened, which I think I touched on last night, which is a personal betrayal on my part, which I don't need to go into.
Mm-hmm.
But that was another kind of life event that fucking I carried a lot of guilt for. You know, I've got ownership for it, but I carried a lot of guilt for.
Yeah.
So I was just adding
to
this chaos
yeah.
of life, but not dealing with any of it.
And well, not dealing with it because you're kind of loathing yourself at this point,
Yeah.
and hating yourself and thinking, well, it doesn't matter because I'm just pushing the fuck it button, and there's no point in me trying to make amends or whatever because I'm on this downward spiral. You know this at this point.
At this point, say I'm 27, I was like, I'm fucking being a part of this 27 club. Honestly, I was convinced from being early 20s or earlier, you know, I was going to be part of the 27 club. It was fucking cool, you know, but I was going to be part of the 27 club without giving any sort of talent or gift to the world. You know what I mean? But
also what we were saying earlier about Jim Morrison, they're the ones in the 27 club. They're just babies.
Yeah,
you know, they're absolute children.
They're still
from this point of
young.
view. They're as we said earlier. They're not even their frontal lobe hasn't even fully amygdala or whatever it is not even fully developed.
Yeah,
and then they're gone. You know, all that talent wasted and whatnot. So
absolutely, but you know, you kind of look up to that, don't you? Because they're cool, they're fucking rock stars,
legends,
but,
idols.
I think it's only, you know, later on in life, and you look back and you think, Jesus, that's when you can go, wow, they were babies. They were babies still
they
trying
lost
to figure
their
out,
way.
figure out this life, but with all this pressure put onto them.
Yeah.
But funnily enough, like, I'm still, you know, the chaos of my drinking, you know, I was waking up in the morning, shaking, I had to have a drink to feel any sort of normalcy. And I got to 28, and I was like, now what?
You've kind of made it past that.
Yeah, it's like, shit. I literally didn't think I'd make it to this point. I was convinced. I was like, now what?
Now what do I do?
And there was a morning where I'd started the house at this point, or I might have not, because I might have lost the renter because he couldn't handle me being in there. I was missing rent payments, and he said, "I'm gonna do it up, but I don't know if I want you back."
So at this point, how is the money situation?
Have
gone. You've gone? That's gone.
Gone. That's totally gone. So it was probably like 24. So there's a few years of a haze of drinking, totally gone. Totally gone. I was on benefits. I'd got past my 27th year, and I was just like, now what?
Now what?
I ended up, because I'd lost the house, I went to live with my mum again.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I still wasn't the best person to be around, but there was this morning that I remember, and the shop was literally 2 minutes away, and he kind of let us in the back door to get the booze.
Yeah.
And even, funnily enough, even when the shop shut down, he still had the card for the cash and carry, and he'd let us go and get booze. Like mine and my mum's, you know, he'd go and get it. It wasn't great, but he didn't know what he was doing. He thought he was helping.
Yeah, well, and you know what? At that point, he was helping because you needed it, and if you didn't get it, you'd have probably gone into like seizures and all that kind of stuff at that point.
And
so
he was helping.
He was helping. Yeah.
So I'd gone down this morning, sunny morning. I even remember what I had on. It's weird, like a blue check shirt. Went down, got my like 3 litres off him. I might have got 6. You know, this time it was cider. That's all I could afford. Or it might have been my mate's lager, who still had a little bit of time for me.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Took the bottle back, and then I don't remember anything. So I was sat down at my mum's, and I don't remember anything. And then I remember coming round, blood everywhere. Like, I was sat there. It was a laminate floor, blood everywhere, like in front of me. Blood, like all from later on description, blood all up like the walls, up the stairway. And I'd had a seizure. I didn't know I had. You know, I'd had a seizure, and my brother came back from work. Because I think we were all living. I think me and my brother were living there together again at the time.
Mm-hmm.
No, we weren't. He'd come to visit. He was living with his missus at the time. Sorry, I just get confused with the facts. But he said
it's understandable that's hazy,
and it looked like I'd had like 10 bells of shit kicked out of me. But and I ended up being obviously rushed to the hospital.
And
I was totally disorientated. You know, I didn't know what was going on.
No, I mean I've had a similar situation twice, booze related, and when I came to, my partner was asking me, I think my parents were there as well, my partner was asking me what were the name of our cats, and like she'd asked me what my name was, and I was like, yeah, my name's, and I don't think I could remember my surname, but they were asking me the name of the cats and I couldn't remember them, and there's an ambulance, paramedics there, and it slowly came back, but it was the most disorientating and scary thing because I had no idea what just happened.
When you first come round, you got no recollection.
No recollection of anything.
Been before, and then just very shortly before that, it's like, what is going on?
It's like your brain's rebooting.
Yeah,
and
to a degree.
The little bits are trickling back in, but you think, is this how I'm going to be forever? So, yeah, and what, did you hit your head? What was the blood from?
What I think had happened is I dropped onto the floor, and actually from future episodes that my friend witnessed, what I tend to do is kind of drop off the chair. He witnessed a few, we were going to that after, but and start smacking my head off the floor through seizuring.
Yeah,
so I must have done that, and like I say, my brother said it just looked like I'd been battered.
Yeah.
You know, so some floors you've not got control, you're hitting your head off the floor, and so obviously rushed to the hospital. Don't really remember much of that, but I remember coming round and then telling me that they'd had to like X-ray my cheek and my face bones just to see if I'd broken anything because it looked that horrendous and horrific. And I had to have the inside of my lip all stitched because I think I'd bitten into like the inside of my top of my lip. So there was all that. But this is the first seizure that I think I'd had.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So then I was in hospital for. There was an episode actually where I thought the hospital staff were out to get me. And I did one. Yeah, no, I escaped from the hospital.
They're after me.
Yeah, I escaped from the hospital. My brother had to come and get me. My face is an absolute mess. So I'm in the hospital grounds, and then some staff came and got me, and then my brother came and picked me up, took me to his, and he watched over me all night. And he was that terrified of it happening again. He thought, and he just stayed awake. He said, and he watched over me.
Can I ask, did the hospital realise that this was to do with drinking?
Well, that's kind of how it came about, of me knowing, because they said this must have been an alcohol seizure.
But then I know you said you escaped, but like for them to not follow up and do that.
I went back in.
Yeah, right.
Because what happened is I was adamant I wasn't going back in because they were after me. So my brother said, right, what can we do?
Yeah.
What can we do here? And they said, right, take him home, watch over him, make sure he comes back tomorrow. He has to come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I don't even remember if I must have had a drink or something when I got back. So the next day, my mate took me back to the hospital, and then I think I was in for like a week or so. Mm-hmm. Which again, very hazy.
Were they doing a detox?
Yeah, they detoxed me at that point. They were giving me Librium. Again, stitched all my lip up. So I started to come round, the swelling had gone down, you know what I mean? But I think I was in there for about a week at that time.
Yeah.
And then I come out, you know what I mean? And it was like, right, cool, I've survived that.
Didn't kill me.
Good. A few days later, it's like, right, I'm gonna reward myself. It's just like, what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's the thing, it's madness.
I'm going to reward myself, and I just got back on it. Just as much as I had been drinking.
Because it hadn't killed you in your mind. Well, in my mind, this is what I was like. It hadn't killed me, and I was a young man, and I'd had a week off or 2 weeks off or whatever. So I felt better. I was like, well, I'm going to have a drink.
Yeah,
I'm going to have a drink.
And
nobody's going to do the damn thing about it to stop me.
And it's not funny, but it's kind of a funny thing is the weekend I went out the weekend with an acquaintance, should we say, drinking acquaintance. We'll just have a few. We ended out going out, getting coke, getting pills, getting all manner of stuff. I ended up back in hospital. I ended up back in hospital a week after I'd been let out.
With another seizure,
with just because I was a complete mess.
I needed detox.
Yeah. So they only kept me in for a couple of days all this time, and I come back out. And then, let's say for the next year, I'd started to kind of realise within myself, I need fucking help here. I need some help. So I started to accept that I got past the 27 club. I wasn't dying at 27. I need some help. You know what I mean? I really need some help. So my sister-in-law at the time actually kind of convinced me to go to Inspire. And I seen a key worker there, and I think I saw him on and off for about 6 months, but still, drinking heavily. He wanted to get me into and have a community detox, which is where you have it at home.
Yeah.
And we were in the process of that, although a very slow process, because I kept messing up to a degree with the amount I was drinking. I think we touched on it. I had a drinks diary, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I've done really well. I've had 7 or 8 Guinness. Must have got some money from somewhere." And then 3 days into this diary, it's like, for fuck's sake, I've messed up. I've drunk 6 litres of cider, page crossed out, the words all jittery, and it's like, then you're back in it.
Yeah, because you're like, well, I can't do this. It's too hard anymore. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
These people they think they can help me, but I'm the only one that's going through this because
they don't understand.
I cannot do this, and boom, you're back out in it.
With just trying minimally, basically, not trying. But I did keep trying to go back to the appointments. You know what I mean? And it was the first taste actually that I'd seen a person in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't let on at first, and it was probably about the 4th meeting that I asked him. I said, "Have you had history with this?" And he said, "Yeah, I was a heroin addict." And this guy to look at, he's called Roland.
Right.
Top guy.
Yeah.
He was bad on heroin, and he was jacked. You know what I mean? He was carrying his bike in the odd occasion. You know what I mean? At the services.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Shit, man, how did you do it?"
Yeah.
And he said, I listen to people that give me a bit of advice about what to do,
did what was suggested,
what support to tap into and stuff like that. And it was the first glimpse I'd had of hope of you can do this, you can actually get out of this position,
Yeah, your life doesn't have to be this hard.
Yeah.
You can. There is hope.
There is hope, and that was just from seeing him, and thinking, "Wow, no, he's done it, so other people can." At the time, I wasn't really that confident with my own abilities, but it's like, no, it's possible, So he started that spark, within of now I can change.
Yeah.
So these internal things were going on.
Yeah.
At this point,
it's weird because when you're in it. And for me, it was like, I'd seen AA on the movies and that. I think I'd done a little bit I'd gone to an drugs and alcohol advice place in New York a couple of times when I was in my mid-30s. But I'd never seen anyone that was like a peer mentor, someone that had the experience. These were all just people that had done counselling work at uni or college or whatever. And no offence to them, but unless you've been in it and come through it, that experience and that hope is, it's worth 10 million.
I don't think you can learn about addiction, alcoholism, whatever terminology you want to use through textbook.
Yeah,
because I always found, and I think you'll agree that, if that person's been there, you're going to listen to them.
Yeah.
If they've not, because it's a lot of it through my time working in Ocean where you were.
Yeah.
It's a very common question that they ask you when they're in detox rooms. Oh, have you been there? Have you experienced this? And if you say, yeah, you've got that instant connection, and they know that you've got empathy
all the way.
It,
because, you know, for me, it was like at the beginning, I was like, oh, I had people on the phone, I was right at the end, and people were like, and I was like, oh, and I was being belligerent and, you know, like aggressive to a point, and I was like, have you been through this? And if someone said no, and I'd be like, well, what do you know? Do you know what I mean? I don't want to speak to you. And I was pissed at the time. So it was, you know, total kind of, belligerence. But that is the way that I think, you know, recovery needs to be, because you know that you've got that support from someone that's been there. And to look at them and go, like what you're saying with Roland, like you looked at him and you're going, this guy's like a vision of health and vitality, and he's got his life together. He's cycling in and he's carrying his mountain bike on it, and he's like, and you're like, wow, like look at me, I'm this little wreck of a human being, but I could be like that. And it gives you that kind of power, and
massively,
and
if it just sparks that little bit off in you, which it did, and it's only really in hindsight that I can look at it and think that's where I started to believe, you know.
As I said, this episode as a whole is going to be split into two parts, because they are quite long episodes, so I had to split them. They're pretty long episodes, you know, each one. So I hope people aren't. I mean, I've listened back to it now and I love them. So I hope people are still listening to it and taking a lot from it. I'm not going to say too much in this one, but just know that the next one is going to be released in 2 or 3 days. So keep your ears open. Bye bye.